be the change agents that you want to see. Be the change for what you want to see in the future.
Hi and welcome back to Urbcast, the podcast about urbanism, architecture, cities, but also many other things. I'm your host, Marcin. I'm an urbanist based in Copenhagen, and I have 3 special occasions today with this episode. First of all, I wanted to say that I am extremely happy to announce that this episode is being aired exactly on the 5th birthday of Urbcast. I've created the podcast in the middle of May of 2020. So it means that here I am celebrating 5 years with big audience, with about 10,000 of you who are listening, who are writing messages to me, who meet me in many different places and come by and chat, which I'm really excited about. The second great occasion is that I'm very thrilled to bring you a very special conversation today with one of the most influential voices in sustainable urban development, namely Helle Søholt, who is the CEO and founding partner of Gehl. Gehl is a consultancy, an architecture consultancy, who is working with cities for 25 years now and was co-founded by Helle and Jan Gehl, one of the greatest urban thinkers and urbanists in the history. And the third special occasion is that this episode is brought to you in a collaboration with Urban Future, which is one of Europe's leading conference on sustainable cities, which is taking place actually starting exactly today in Łódź, in this beautiful city of Łódź in Poland. And I hope that I can meet you there. When the episode is airing, I'm probably standing there on stage because I'm moderating the opening session of the conference. So yeah, if you're there, I hope to meet you. And if not, make sure to follow the Urban Future Conference because there will be the next one. And there will be also a lot of content from the current edition. Helle from Gehl will be a keynote speaker there. And ahead of the event, we sat down to talk about how can we reimagine cities to better serve people, prioritize shared spaces, and build strong social infrastructure. We explore what it takes to stop urban sprawl, why smaller cities matter more than ever, and how public-private partnerships can transform how we build the cities of tomorrow. So it's a great triple occasion, the Urbcast birthday, the episode, a very special episode with Helle from Gehl, and also the collaboration and the start of the conference, the Urban Future. So let's dive into the conversation. I'm very excited to be here at Gehl again, actually, because this is not the first conversation with someone from Gehl. This time, this is with you, Helle, which makes me very excited because you are the one who is setting the direction for the whole company. And I'm very excited that we can also collaborate together because of the Urban Future Conference. But maybe let's start from the beginning. And to those of the listeners who might not know you, I would like you to introduce yourself very briefly and tell us what made you start to work with this amazing urban field, urbanism and architecture.
Thank you so much for visiting. It's lovely to meet and to discuss where the world is heading. I am Helle Søholt and I am the CEO and have been from the very beginning. And I'm also the founding partner. I started the company together with Professor Jan Gehl back in the year 2000. So we've just actually celebrated our 25th anniversary. Thank you. This urban field is interesting to me because it influences our lives. You could say that about architecture as well, of course, but cities is where we have access to opportunity. It is where we find inspiration. and we are exposed to what is different from ourselves. This is where home and work and you could say everyday life comes together. And I believe that by shaping the urban environment, we can in fact influence people's quality of life. So that mix of complex issues, but where we can actually solve for a better future, is something that has attracted me from the very beginning.
I would love to talk about this evolution of last 25 years and more of changes in approach to urban field. But before that, I would like to ask you about the conference itself, the Urban Future Conference. What makes you excited for it, and also for going to this beautiful Polish city of Łódź?
Well, I'm really always excited about going to these types of conferences, but maybe particularly Urban Futures, because for Gehl, it's always been important both to have a strong core of services and an area within our expertise, but we are also always exploring the edges of that field and trying to push forward the field of urbanism. And I'm considering the Urban Futures Conference as a platform for me to sort of go and feel forward. What are the tendencies? What are the trends? But also ideas for what does the world need from us right now? There is not one answer to that. So having these convenings and conferences where we can explore those possible futures together are very inspiring.
Speaking of the learning part and sharing the knowledge, what are some of your kind of key findings from your career? And I know it's been a long career and long time of Gehl architects changing the cities worldwide. But if you would say today, what are the challenges that maybe we didn't have those 20 years ago? So what are those new tendencies that we as urbanists, designers should address?
Well, I think the level of complexity and issues that we are dealing with today is just increasing. Today, there are so many different challenges that we need to solve in the same place, and particularly public space or space between buildings is where a lot of these challenges are coming together. We need to find more space for movement and transportation. We need to find more people for social cohesion and connectedness between people. We also need to resolve for climate change and find space for more urban nature and water, handling of water. We need to find new models for economic development and prosperity. And the public space somehow becomes a melting pot for all of those challenges coming together. Today's challenges are pointing towards the need for new ways of collaborating. Most importantly, none of these challenges that we are looking into can be solved alone by local government. It is also not something that local NGOs or citizen groups can solve by themselves. And often the financing mechanisms are spread on different types of organizations and companies. So we are in a place where the radical collaboration amongst partners need to find a next level. And that, I think, is one of the major challenges of today. When we then talk more about the physical form, then I think it is urgent for us to begin transforming cities from the existing urban fabric, not repeat the tendencies there has been to tear down buildings and build new all the time, or keep sort of expanding the sprawl of the existing cities. We have to find new ways of approaching the physical form where we transform from within. And then I would say, secondly, we are experiencing a larger social divide in many cities. and the social cohesion and planning for social connectedness in cities is crucial. And I believe that a neighborhood scale could be one way of resolving this connectedness and resiliency amongst communities. Partnerships, transformation of the urban form, and then social cohesion is where I would say our biggest challenges are today.
There's a lot of talk lately about this, about the scale of the collaboration, right? So that there's even cities like Copenhagen, they can't solve the challenges alone. They need this collaboration across the different municipalities and so on. Thinking about those challenges, I also wanted to ask about the role of company of Gehl, and how did the role change over the years? So how did you work 20 years ago and how do you work now? Do you still consider yourself being architects or maybe consultants, maybe something in between?
Gehl has always been more of a hybrid company, I would say. We are not a traditional architecture firm, primarily focusing on the form. We are also not only a sort of communications company focusing on, you could say, how to communicate or engage people. And we are also not a traditional consulting firm only delivering strategy and policy. So Gehl is a hybrid of those and have always been. I would say in the beginning, we maybe focused a lot on public space in itself and the needed behavior change of sort of everyday people. But today, I think we see that in a broader perspective as culture, and how do we move cultures in cities more than just individual behaviors. I also think we started out being much more analog, of course, where we were out in spaces and recording and mapping and interviewing. And of course, we still do that. But now we have digital tools to help us gather data and analyze data and create dashboards and connect those, you could say, insights that we are gathering with other data sets. It could be on economic development, or it could be on transportation, air pollution, food consumption, other things. And that helps us see broader perspectives and complexities, you could say, that we didn't necessarily focus so much on in the early days.
With all those digital tools, aren't you afraid that it might be tempting to use only those and stop being out and stop being connected with the so to say real world? Because nowadays everything is so easy with like all of those different urban analytics tools.
Of course, there's always a risk that we rely entirely on digital solutions. That's where you could say at the very core, we've always focused on people. It is for people and with people that we plan all the places that we engage with. And it's also people that decides. It's also, politicians and leaders and project managers and so forth in the organizations we work in who makes decisions. So having that people focus in both the delivery, but also the, you could say, operating model and the sort of co-creation process is incredibly important. And I don't think we can do that only by relying on digital tools. We can also see that you can have all the data that you want, but if you don't ask relevant questions of that data, it can be very difficult to use the data for collective decision making. So it is, the processes are incredibly important. Where we are right now, I think, is that we are trying to connect that people approach to the planetary challenges that we are seeing, so that we are essentially connecting people and planet, or people and sustainability, in an even more deliberate approach than we necessarily did 25 years ago.
You said that this human element, the people-centric element, is very important, as it's obviously the core of your work. But how do you make sure you can still keep proposing those human scale values while leading the change across different political and cultural contexts and challenges. I think, interestingly enough, some of your work, Jan Gehl's work, worked very well in different contexts. Like, for example, in Australia, in Melbourne, the city was inspired and started to transform. But I remember being at Jan Gehl's lecture when he said that one of the biggest challenges was to actually share some of your work and findings in cities like London. Did seem not to adapt that well. So how can you still make sure that you basically access those different cities and work with them? Especially that in some of them political contexts are different. And for example, the American cities, they are very reliant on cars and so on. So maybe it's just such a big challenge that it's hard to answer.
There is something very, very timeless about Jan Gehl's research and principles, because Jan actually focused on Homo sapiens. At the very core, we are all human beings, despite the fact that we are culturally different. We sort of need the same things. We need comfort and safety. We need to feel connected to other people. We need protection from wind and hard sun, and we need access to various sort of certain physical elements. We need to have a home. There are a lot of very human needs, you could say, that actually brings us together. And by speaking to those needs, we have been able to find common ground, both between political parties in the same cities, but also with decision makers who can see themselves in the findings that we share. Oh, I actually need to visit my grandmother on Sundays. Oh, I'm actually also taking the metro to work. I'm also experiencing feeling of insecurity at station, or whatever it is. Speaking to those very human experiences have always worked for us. Of course, we totally recognize the cultural differences in every place where we work. And it's incredibly important that people can also see that we recognize those cultural differences. And again, we never come with sort of a Copenhagen model and say, oh, you have to learn from how Copenhagen developed. It's super important in all of the places that we work that we create collaborative process and engage the clients and the organizations that we work with throughout all phases of our work. We engage them and do the analysis phase with them. We workshop findings and insights as we look at the data. And we develop strategies in collaboration that make sense with the short-term, medium-term, and long-term possibilities that each place has. Yeah, that's basically how we have approached it. So finding what is, you could say, sort of something we all share, and then using data and collaboration to show the way.
You say it's hard to apply Copenhagen model to other cities, and I obviously agree, because there were some conditions that made it possible for Copenhagen to develop as it did. But still, when you think of it, are there some elements that you think could be easily transferable to other cities? And I think I know, as you said, it's not about specific city solutions, but more the core principles that you said, the principles of Jan Gehl's. But still, are there any solutions that you feel like are more transferable than others? And I mean here, particularly from Copenhagen to some of the other cities.
Definitely, I would say the focus and the continued development there has been on the soft infrastructure in the city. And here I mean the public spaces, streets, parks, bicycle infrastructure, activation of ground floors, programming of areas. The whole sort of continued focus there has been throughout now 30, 40 years on public life and public spaces is transferable to other places. Today, I would maybe call that the social infrastructure of a city. Traditionally, in city planning, there's been, in my view, far too much focus on traditional infrastructure, be it roads, be it sort of systems of various forms. And we haven't paid enough attention to the social part of the infrastructure. Where are the hubs? Where are the havens? Where are the hangouts? How is all of this connected? And as importantly, who are the drivers of this social infrastructure and how are they supported? How can people engage in activities in their own local hood or in the city overall? So that is an area where Copenhagen has had a lot of attention and has come very far. And I think other cities can easily learn from that. It's not expensive.
Speaking of other cities, not only Copenhagen, although this podcast is in a way Copenhagen-centric because this is where I'm living myself, and also a lot of amazing knowledge is here with many different offices and actors that made this Copenhagen development possible. As we talk about urban future, that's a place for people to meet, and we have, I guess, hundreds of cities and city representatives. To look a bit broader, is there any city or maybe a couple of cities that you look up to when you think of urban transformation? And of the cities that were on the rise lately, maybe some of them that you've been working in?
There are so many things happening around the world, so it's difficult to point out any one particular city. I think if I should just name a couple of examples, I think many of us are inspired by Paris at the moment and their sort of rapid transformation over the past, let's say, 5 to 10 years, where more streets have been converted, more bicycling is there, much more greenery is there, pollution has gone down. The whole idea about the 15-minute city that we have also always called the humanscale city is very well illustrated in a large city that I think many urban areas could be inspired by that. But I also think small cities with no budgets that are innovating is also places where we can find new inspiration. I was just at a conference earlier this week on how to activate town centers, and the little town of Middelfart in Denmark has made a very interesting new organization called the Bridge Builders. And this organization, Bridge Builders, are actually combining forces between private and public sector to activate the downtown or the town center. So I think we need new ways of collaborating. I think we need new organizations to be at the helm of urban development. I think we need to prioritize very hard because not every single little village can have a lot of, retail or public services and so forth. So we have to prioritize very hard. That doesn't mean that we cannot have life between buildings, because you can work with life between buildings, even in a housing area, even in a residential neighborhood. But we do have to prioritize very hard where we put our efforts. But inspiration can come from large as well as small places. It's all about finding new ways of working together to solving these complex issues.
I'm glad to hear about the small town scale because this is the conversation that started actually as well in Poland, where I'm from, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or something like that, where suddenly there was more attention to the smaller cities as they also can innovate and they also can attract people, especially those who are tired of the big city life. And also now with the remote work, obviously there are possibilities of living in a smaller place. Speaking about the change, you already talked about some of the solutions about the importance of preserving the human scale or introducing it in the places that it's not there, and also the importance of the partnerships. But I have one more question about that. I was wondering if there could be just one thing you could change in how cities are made today. What would it be?
It's a super difficult question. I think, again, I would say the one thing that cities can focus on that has the largest impact, I think, is the spaces that we share. I would point to the social infrastructure of cities. Again, it is not necessarily expensive. If you want to build new housing, if you want to build new cultural centers or whatever it is much more expensive. But if you can transform and develop from within and start with the spaces that we share, you can add a layer of quality to the city that makes the urban area attractive and welcoming and enables people to connect with one another in ways that can make their lives feel more whole. So that, I think, is still where I would point to a need for starting that transformation.
I'm asking that because I know there are some of the policymakers, city representatives listening to that as well, to that podcast. So I just wanted to give them this one step, one solution that they could start with. And I think that this is important. What you say, it doesn't necessarily need to be something very big of a huge budget, but it can be some smaller incremental steps leading to that change.
Yes, and I think then combined with, there's always this start, stop, continue exercise that you need to do, right? So if you start looking at understanding your social infrastructure in the city, you can sort of start developing the city there. But then I think what needs to stop is the continued urban sprawl that we have seen across Europe for the last several decades now. Even in small towns where the number of citizens are going down, we are still seeing a sprawling of the urban fabric into big box development and retail outside the cities, shopping malls, and other types of developments that are essentially left over from a modernistic approach to planning. And that has to stop because we have to create space for more nature. We do not have the luxury of resources to just be continuing that sprawl over massive areas. And if we want to create pockets with life and connectedness between people, we need to concentrate rather than spreading the public life. That, I think, is incredibly important as well, that we support politicians in able to take these more difficult decisions of saying no and concentrating and actually changing the planning approach that we have had for many years.
To wrap those learnings up, I would love to ask you for a book recommendation so that we can inspire the listeners further, especially those that maybe can't join the Urban Future in Poland. So they also have something that they can follow after the discussion.
Well, I actually think that the very classic book, Life Between Buildings, is still so worth reading because it really does focus on these basic shared Homo sapien qualities, something that we all share. If there is something we need in today's urban futures, both today and as we look into the future, I think is to find common ground, to find places where we can actually share cities and not further this division and segregation and spreading of activities that we've seen for so long. So I think there is probably a lot of people who have not read the book because it is very aged by now. It came out in 1971. I was only born 1 year later. But these basic principles are still very inspiring and also for us at the Gehl company. And then I would just recommend everybody who is participating in the event next week to be the change agents that you want to see, be the change for what you want to see in the future.
That's a great wrap up. And the book itself, of course, some of Jan Gehl's books were recommended on the podcast previously, but this is fine, obviously. I mean, as this is such an important book that influenced the whole theory of and practice as well of urban action. So thanks for that. And I'm very excited to join you as well in Łódź for the Urban Future Conference. And I hope to be inspired there as well. So thank you so much, Helle, for joining Urbcast.
Absolutely. I'm looking very much forward to joining you.
Thanks a lot for listening to Urbcast and tuning in for the newest episode. If you are at the Urban Future Conference, see you there. If not, and you would like to contribute, please share this episode with someone who might find it inspiring or might like it. I will be very thankful for that we can grow the audience of Urbcast together. And if you have any other ideas, any thoughts you would like to connect, just reach out to me. You will find the links to my social media in the description. Talk to you soon.